everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Vanessa. I'm one of the co-founders of the Industry in Spanglish. And so we created this space to basically connect and educate, people from our cultura, like todos los Latinos, people within all of the diaspora of the land culture. So I wanted to introduce Jennifer Mota, who is moderating tonight. And she's a multimedia journalist. She recently did a Teen Vogue fashion interview. She's interviewed your favorite artists from Tiny to J Balvin to Choki Town. She's done it all. So I'll let Jenny take it away from here. Thanks, everyone.
Hey. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you so much for that intro. Like she mentioned, we're really excited to have several of these conversations, right? Where we kind of really like submerge ourselves in the duality of being bicultural while also working in the industry. And I feel like production is such an important aspect of music, obviamente, right? Like the producer plays such an important role in the creation of a song. And I feel like, well, we all feel like we need to give producers their flowers and talk about the creation process more with producers because of how hands-on and how much of the creation of the song, they're building, like they're the brain of it, right? So I'm really excited to have this conversation. And I wanted to just dive in and give everyone the space to introduce themselves, tell us pretty much about where you're from, your culture, and how you got into music production, right? So I would love to start with Jenny. Another Jenny in the house.
Very popular name. Well, my name is Jenny. I go by MixedbyJNY. I'm a mixing audio engineer. I've been in the game for about 6 years, born and raised in Los Angeles. I feel like the Spanish community in music is not as rich out here. And I hope to be the first one to like build it and bring people together. But I've worked with Rock Nation and TDE, Human Resources, and a lot of independent artists. I continue to build out here. I started engineering in a college. I was always into music, so I played the instrument in high school, but I knew my real passion was mixing and engineering. So I don't know, it's a brief summary for me. It's hard for me to talk about myself, but that's like a brief intro.
Girl, you mentioned some big names. It was perfect. And I love that you mentioned being in the West Coast. And yes. I love when people speak about regionality because that's so important, and how like the way Latinidad is branded, they think that we're all like growing up in the inner city and like that we all have the same experience, where like the NYC, Miami, Philly culture on the East Coast is very different than what people experience on the West Coast. Also, like, la cultura, like where NYC could be maybe more predominantly Caribbean, and in the West Coast be a different story where it could be more like Mexican and Southern American and Central American. So I love that you touched on that because it is a different vibe. And congrats for being here, and congrats for like everything you're putting on for the culture. Ella, can you tell us about yourself and how you started and your cultura?
I'm from Venezuela originally. I moved to New York 8 years ago. My background is classical music, jazz. I'm a trumpet player. I consider myself an artist, songwriter, producer because I'm a terrible sound mixer. I came to New York City to study jazz. I work with some names like Wynton Marsalis, Arturo Sandoval, big names in the jazz industry, but very deep in my heart, I wanted to be an artist, and that's when I look around in my country. I didn't have anybody around that I was like, first of all, they were not interested in producing me because I didn't have the money by the time. And I had to learn to do it myself. I started with GarageBand, and because I was familiar with recording already in the studios with my dad. He's a jazz musician as well. So I just decided to produce my first album by myself. It was a kind of a little disaster, I must say. But that disaster got 2 nominations for Latin Grammy in 2014 when I was super young. And then I moved to New York City. I didn't have any songs to produce. I was like so immersed in my college experience. So I hear from a teacher that sometimes when you feel stuck as an artist, maybe you don't do things for yourself, but you can do things for others. So I had a good friend of mine. Her name is Emebe Caldera, an amazing Venezuelan artist. She was looking for a producer, and I'm like, I did this for myself. It worked. We could do it to see how it goes. And then this record, you know, it ended up having Rubén Blades. It ended up having Maria Idalia Hernandez, who used to play with 440 and Juan Luis Guerra. And that's how it started. Later, I produced a single of mine, and in 2018, I won the Grammy for Producer of the Year. I was the first female ever to win in the history of the Latin Grammys, and I guess the American as well. So that's how my journey, thank you. That's how my journey started. But, you know, I feel like in terms of like the culture, I'm like Jenny, like I'm passionate about independent artists. I still consider myself an independent artist, and I'm passionate to work with them and trying to help them find their own voice. I'm always in the search for that good song that is gonna reflect who the artist is and it's gonna connect with the audience, and that's what I'm all about.
Yes, I love that. Congrats to you too. And thank you for everything you've done for the culture. Everyone's just like, yes, yes.
Yes.
Flowers to everyone, right? So I'm going on Mirror, right? The person next is Buda. So can you please tell me about your cultura growing up, bicultural, well, and how this kind of like
Cool.
led you also played a part and led you into like production. Tell us
Okay.
about yourself.
How you doing? My name is Buda Da Future, one half of Buda and Grands. Been doing production professionally since 2005, 2006. Born in New York, Washington Heights, born in Harlem, raised in the Bronx. Both of my parents are from Dominican Republic. San Pedro de Macorís, y la capital. I started, you know, just growing up in the Bronx, you kind of become, you know, you're raised in the melting pot of where hip hop has started. I grew up in the household listening to Jose, Aran Gravier, fucking Coco Bond, everybody you could think of. My mom was playing it under the sun. And while I was growing up listening to that, I got influenced by hip hop, like from the core in the Bronx. And the first artist I was able to work with while I was in school was 50 Cent. And then from there, we started to work with over 45 platinum artists. From Rick Ross, we discovered Fred the Godson. We also discovered Dave East. We developed their sound. Little Kim, Neo, Victor Manuel, Wyclef. Throughout the years, we just was blessed to work with a lot of people and just providing sounds, you know, to people's lives. And from producing to doing licensing, we just try to have our hands in everywhere. And you know, just growing up in New York and being influenced by so many cultures. And every summer I go to DR, learn what I had to learn, eat all the food as you can see, and come back home and just, you know, provide music for people. But it's been a good journey. Right now we just been working. We have our own studio downtown in the city, and I'm just here. I'm honored to be on this dope panel. Thank you.
Yes, and congrats to you too.
Thank you.
Flowers
Thank you.
to you, and thank you for everything you've done for the culture. I love that you mentioned New York. New York is literally, I feel, the mecca of all meccas.
My mom's like, "Coño, tú eres Dominican York." No, they say that.
Yeah, so I love that you mentioned that. And, you know, I'm obviously going to get to like everyone's individual journey, but I love what everyone's contributing so far, because it just shows just like the grand variety of like different experiences in terms of like navigating as Latinos and also in music. So I'm excited. Napoles, did I say that right?
Napoles, yeah.
Napoles, okay. Tell me about your culture, where you from, how you got into production.
Well, yo nací en Venezuela, de padres dominicanos, and then I just moved to New York, and tú sabes, el verdadero sancocho. So it's funny because everybody's like, yo, where you from? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you talk Venezuelan, but sometimes tú suelta un coño. So it's like, it's good tú sabes, para mí me beneficia mucho. And I'm sorry that I'm speaking Spanish. For me, it's much better because el English is not very good looking sometimes, so, especialmente cuando estoy en la cámara. But, I mean, viviendo en Nueva York, tú sabes, for more, almost 20 years already, and trabajado con, gracias a Dios, Omar, muchos de los ídolos míos, tú sabes, entre eso, Romeo, Yankee, Don Omar, Prince Royce, por ahí sigue la lista, pero también, como dice mi compatriota, I love to just trabajar con nuevos artistas. You understand what I'm saying? Like, me encanta start something from the gag and discover new things. And now I'm here in Florida, so I have 2 weeks in New York because of my family and my friends, and you know, in New York is New York, and I'm 2 weeks in Miami, so it's a little difficult, but just working, y un placer estar aquí, de verdad, para mí, soy fanático de todo y gracias por la invitación.
Yes, I love that. And flowers to you too. Congrats for being here, and congrats on honestly everything that you're also doing para la cultura and everything you've contributed to. I want to make sure everyone get their flowers. We can just keep continuing with you so far, like in terms of your duality, right? And navigating as a producer. And when I mean duality, I mean like your biculturalness, and being able to understand different subcultures, right? And for example, you being born in Venezuela, de descendiente dominicano, having different types of understandings, you know, how has this translated into your music? How has this helped you navigate music differently, maybe también, like as a producer? How does it set you apart?
Maybe, I mean, almost everything, you know what I mean? I've been, como te digo, listening to, like, como dice Buda, you know, my mom's cleaning every weekend to be able to travel, hip hop, all of a sudden, tú tienes un sancocho de sabores, and it helped me a lot because, you know, one of the things that really, I think that really ayuda a un músico, productor o artista is to travel, you know what I mean? When you understand all the cultures, and trabajando con personas como Sergio George, entendí que sometimes you can put una trompeta de champeta colombiana, and all of a sudden people will identify with it and understand that, hey, that person or ese grupo de personas was able to create something that where I'm from, and I appreciate that, and they feel it, and you know what I mean, you do it with passion, and all of a sudden people maybe don't understand why they feel so identificados, pero it's because of that. It's because you're taking a little bit of their tú sabes, de su raíz, y la pones en la música, and I think that really connects with people.
You know, I love that you mentioned the example of the trumpet and working with Sergio George, because I feel like the greatest producers have like an ever-evolving source of references, and when you're bicultural and have experienced so much, like that is huge, right? And I'm wondering, Pati, was there ever a time when you were like maybe in a space that was non-Latino where you had a dope reference, and like, is there an example in a song, something that may have been different that made a particular project special because of a reference that has to do with, you know, this bicultural identity that you have, or just being Latino?
Yeah, I mean, it happened to me in Atlanta in ATL. I was working with Bad Boys, South, algo así. Estaban todos los Little John y toda esta gente, and I remember that we was just creating, and all of a sudden I'm the little Latino guy in the corner, and it's kind of like, you know what I mean? Nobody knows about the whole merengue structure or whatever, and we started, and I started putting some merengue pianos on a trap, and the way they looked at me was kind of like, what's this? But why feel so good? Understand what I'm saying? And that's one of the things that you can say, you know, gracias a Dios por ser Latino or whatever. I can understand what they're doing, and I can understand what my families and my country how to combine that, and I think fusion is the future of the music. At the end of the day, tú lo estás viendo ahora. You can have un merengue con un dembow o jazz como y ponerle una champeta arriba and it will work, understand? Y Balvin, lo que se tiene que montar la persona correcta and will make it happen. Y para mí es lo que más me gusta, es poder fusionar. Maybe people not gonna like it, pero si pasa y le gusta, you're gonna be the first one o eres un pedacito de arena para contribuir al futuro de la música, and that's what I like about it.
Love that. Such a dope story. Jenny, tell me about you. How have you navigated this duality, right? And your biculturalness and in the different subcultures that you may exist in the West Coast. How has this translated into your music?
So I feel like it's the opposite what Napoles is saying basically. I've worked with a lot of American artists. They rap in English. It's trap music, it's hip hop, everything's in English. So it's American rap music. So recently I've been working with a lot of like Hispanic rap music, and they decide to either sing their hooks in Spanish and then rap their verses in English. So I feel like with everything I've gained, all the talents and skills from working with producers and American artists, I feel like now with all these skills I've learned, I can apply to working with these Spanish artists, and then they can meet like a standard of rap music. So I feel like that in these sessions, I'm able to like just communicate them and just build their whole music into making it sound like a contemporary rap music in a sense. I don't know if that makes sense. But
I'm also wondering, oh, sorry.
No, keep going.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, like, were you ever in a space with like non-Latino artists and maybe had a reference that had to do with like maybe something that was more cultural, or maybe like you had an input that was very different, or maybe it has nothing to do with the culture at all? Was there ever anything maybe that was more LA based, maybe something about you being a West Coaster that played a role in like the creation of a specific track?
You know what I have noticed is that there's a lot of like rappers who want to slowly in their lyrics put in Spanish words, and I know D Smoke does it a lot, and I think Drake did in his last album in one of his songs. I don't know which one, but he incorporated the endings of his lyrics with like rap words. So I feel like as an engineer, I've been told like, how do you say this in Spanish? You know? So that's the only aspects I've had in recording sessions when people want to translate from English to Spanish.
Love that. Thank you for your for just existing in that space.
Right.
Everything like that's what you're doing is so dope. Buda, tell me about how you exist in this space with your duality. How does your biculturalness, how does being part of multiple subcultures translate in your music?
It's pretty cool. It's like having an extra weapon on your Batman belt. It works in our favor creatively. It's definitely when you're expressing and it just adds a different style and sauce to your production, I think. And then being a part of like different subcultures, I just think you have a better understanding of the consumer and how the person wants to listen to music, and then you bring in a different direction to the actual artist as well, because you know they don't get to see that insight of like the Latin community. So especially when we're like picking singles or just messing around with sonics, I feel like it works in my favor, because I'll go out to the clubs out here in the city, or when I'm back home in DR, I get a different vibe. So when I come back here, and you get to hear it a lot, because like when Dave and a lot of these rappers get to travel, they always want to call you and ask you stuff about your country and stuff. So when you tell them and they get to experience the country or the actual scenery, then come back to record, it gives it a dope experience, I think. I hope that.
Thank you. No, yeah. And I'm wondering, like, from your experience, was there ever like a track or a moment that your Latino references or maybe a reference in Dominican music had played a role in like the creation of a track or like maybe a bar?
Yo, you know it's crazy. I think me and Dave definitely there was a record he did a while back called KD where we shot at Dykeman, and he had a lot of Spanish references, and maybe it was that, but I don't know. That's a good question. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I'll think about it.
I'll get back to you. Curiosa.
Yeah.
Ella, tell me about you. How do you navigate the space with your duality, with being bicultural and being part of, you know, these multiple subcultures? How does it translate in your music?
Well, I'm gonna speak also as a musician because it's the experience where I'm always in New York City playing for other people and playing my own gigs as an artist. I hear this refrain. There's this wonderful trumpet player. I always use him as a reference. His name is Mike Rodriguez. He's from Puerto Rico, and he says that Latinos were dangerous because we're able to navigate and we're able to play like an American in a jazz setting. You can sit down with Wynton Marsali's Jazz Lincoln Center Orchestra, and the next day you can be playing for Mark Anthony, and that's the beauty of what we go through. I feel like Latinos, like the way that we suffer in this country, the way that we immigrate, I don't know, it gives us like this little extra thing that it makes us special wherever we sit down, whether it's in a recording session, like producing a track. And I feel like the closest experience that I've had like this, I grew up in a Christian church, and I'm a huge fan of gospel music. And I always felt like a gospel music was something that is created by, African American. It's very Black. It's part of the culture. And I feel like I never felt I was going to be able to do that, and I wanted to do a track with the whole gospel choir, but my voice is not great enough to be singing, with a choir like that. So I put together this track, and I put together a mix. Half of the band were Latinos. They were like in different parts of the world, Venezuela, Colombia, and the other half were musicians, like Black musicians who actually make a living out of gospel music. And we mixed this during pandemic, and I decided to make this track bilingual. And we featured this amazing Black Asian American singer. Her name is Judith Hill. She used to play with Michael Jackson, and she has now her own thing. And we make this track a bilingual track. And it was written in Spanish, the second half in English, and we have like a virtual gospel choir produced by a good friend of mine. And the mix of all of these elements is just beautiful, when you connect your culture, your people, and you mix, a Latin American drummer, it may not be, we can imitate as much as we can, the sound of the great guys who, play this music, is their music, and we play it out of respect. But this diversity gave us something that, everything has been created already, but we have this blessing as Latinos of being here, and always to siempre como que estamos como más adelante en términos de que siempre podemos dar algo extra, ¿no? A la música, y eso es muy hermoso porque we can give it out of our from our culture. O sea, nosotros los latinos también tenemos herencia africana y tenemos historias muy parecidas, no sé, yo consigo como muchas similitudes, por lo menos en la música colombiana, se conecta con la música llanera venezolana. Y yo siento que eso es hermoso. También puedo escuchar un ritmo mexicano que me recuerda al merengue de guerra, ¿sabes? Así es como yo lo veo, y me parece que es muy bonito.
I love that you said that, because one of the main reasons too I asked about the references is that so much of our movements are so ancestral, and we don't stop and think about it. Like the fact that reggaeton, Dominican dembow, reggae en español, hip hop is all under like the same movement, we tend to like separate ourselves because of language. Like literally reggaeton no existe without like reggae en español, who were like the Jamaican descendants in Panama. And hip hop like literally was created by Afro-Caribbeans too. So much of this ancestral, from like the percussion, the breaks to the drums. So there's so many similarities because we all kind of, you know, come from that diasporic migration and forced migration. Sorry, I don't want to say it lightly. That shit was forced. But I'm glad that you mentioned that, because it's something important to talk about. And obviously, I think as producers, I know that you guys have that ear to pay attention to those things. And I've always often wondered if, like, working with artists, you know, they themselves kind of realize that or see that, like when Napoles mentioned lo de Lil Jon and just putting that merengue to the trap, I'm like, I mean, I don't know why y'all so surprised. It's ancestral, man. Like once that leg start moving. But thank you so much, Ella, for your input. And I kind of wanted to keep on with you as well, because something that I definitely wanted to talk about with you and Jenny is navigating this space as a woman. A lot of my work also places me in the studio, and there's a lot of mansplaining. There's a lot of like, and depending where you are in the continent is different, because right, when you're in Latin America, men can be more machista, so the experience is even a little bit more aggressive sometimes and different. So I'm wondering what your experience has been like as a musician and producer, artist, as a woman in this space, and how do you feel the industry can do better for change in terms of creating space?
Well, I think I always get in trouble when I answer these questions because I'm really polemic about, I have really mixed feelings about this, but I love having this question. I feel like in the Latin industry, there are a lot of things happening at the same time. You know, we see like a lot of the Latin industries happening in Miami. Like our friend, you know, when we were not recording, we were talking about everybody wants to move now to Miami. Everything is over there, is happening there. And I feel like I don't see that as a good thing. I see it like people follow trends just because, you know, things that happen. But I feel like that's an issue because there's a lot of people, great producers, great musicians, great songwriters, you know, who are coming out of New York, who are coming out of Atlanta, who are coming out of different places that people wouldn't even imagine. And in terms of like in the subject of being a woman, I feel like, yes, there has always been a lack of work, to be honest. Like the Grammys did this encuesta, I don't know how to say it in English, y esta encuesta se trataba de preguntarnos cosas como que cómo te has sentido, how has been your experience as a woman. And there was one question that really took my attention, and it's that they were asking, have you considered having kids, and you have decided not to have them just because of the lack of work? And I'm like, I mean, I'm not the kind of woman who thinks like I'm gonna be fulfilled if I have kids or not. I'm very feminist, and if you want to have kids, that's on you. Like if you don't want to have them, that's okay. You're not less woman than that. But that question really took my attention because there's a lack of work for women producers, engineers, and also I see like a lack of solidarity between the whole female thing. You know, I feel like that we should be more solidary to ourselves. Like, for example, all my mentors, they were all men. And when I was young, like I did have many females who were working as producers or people who were working in the music industry, but I didn't saw somebody that I can look up at, hey, can you teach me how to mix this thing? I didn't have nobody to call, you know, and it was like a very lonely process. And And my experience with men has been positive most of the time, but the things that we know that happens in the studio, like somebody harass somebody's not giving this person an opportunity, somebody, you know, you had a fight with somebody and that person's gonna close doors to you. That's something that has always been there. And right now people is starting to speak out. But for me, I feel like we had to make like a really big effort in terms of like trying to clean our own spaces, because there's a lot of women who are in power and they're not doing anything for women, you know. And it's a hard conversation to have, because I'm an independent artist and it's hard for me to see that this person is in Billboard, this person is in, I don't know, in these specific awards, and they're not doing nothing for independent artists like us, you know? And they know that you're there and they know that you're doing work. You know how hard it is for an independent artist to make a release, you know, and you try and you try. And the other thing that I've noticed is that for female artists, or artists who are established, you know, most of the songs that they sing are written by all men, you know? So this is a thing that, and I would like Jenny say this, I don't know how has been her experience, you know, I can see she's, you know, really established and she's, you know, she has different experiences than me, but I feel like we should be more, you know, when I won the Grammy, this happened, like a lot of organizations start raising because we were the 2%. And like 3 years after, we're going backwards. And one of the things that I noticed is that we start giving awards to ourselves. And it's not the time of giving awards to ourselves for achieving anything. It's the time for us to work for ourselves. That's different. It was too soon for start giving females like awards for this because you have been 30 years in the office of record labels or whatever. It was the time for us as females to get together and have an honest conversation of how can we make the spaces safer for ourselves. That's my opinion.
Wow, first of all, you mentioned a lot of points.
Yeah, she explained
First of all,
super well.
I know, Jenny, you're dying. Like, I saw your face, girl. I'm gonna give you the mic right now. But I think that questionnaire question, that point to whether or not we've decided, well, I'm saying we, but women decide to have kids is such an important question, because that being a mom is a full-time job. So how can you be able to produce and create and be able to like cater to your craft while also be able to cater to a family or a child? Or how can you be able to do that if you're not getting jobs? Maybe because of the lack of resources or the lack of access to certain spaces. And that was such an important, you mentioned a lot of important points, Ella. So thank you so much for your feedback and you know, for sharing your experience. Jenny, can you tell me about your experience in the studio, and how do you think the industry can play a part, maybe in the systems, or how can we change as an industry? I don't know.
Ella just described everything I had on my mind, honestly. But I took that same questionnaire, and I also was shocked when I saw that. I'm glad people are speaking about it, because for me, there is a pause. I'm 30 years old and I'm planning to have kids around 34, 35. I don't know. I'm trying to meet my goals. I'm trying to just get to where I want to be, but it's kind of hard when there's not a lot of opportunities to get me to that position. So I think people in power, like she says, managers, A&Rs, recording studio managers, anybody who's a female who's been in the game for a minute, I feel like they should be responsible to give that opportunity to upcoming musicians who are females, or engineers, or anybody who's in the female in aspect of the music industry. Like she said, they're giving awards to these people who've been there for 30 years, but half of their team is like all men. So it's like kind of confusing to be like, okay, try to give you flowers when I don't even have those opportunities you had. or whatever career or whatever route you took, you know? So it's kind of hard to be like, oh, I want to be like her, but it's like, how if I don't have those opportunities? I feel like the only change I can do is give other females an opportunity. I, as a mixing engineer or recording engineer, if I see a female who's a great singer, who has talent, who's committed, who wants to put out music, I'll offer free studio time or free mixing, and we'll work together. Right now, I'm working with this Latin artist named Jasmine Alvarado, and she's great. She sings in Spanish, raps in English, and I just love working with her because I feel like not only is she Latin, but I feel like I can stick to my Latin culture, hip hop and R&B at the same time working with her, and she's a female. So I feel like I would like to know more people like her so I can help female artists and give them an opportunity. So
yeah. Thank you so much for your points too, Jenny. I understand that they like a lot of her points were also points that you agree with. I do want to know, from your perspective, how can men become better allies? Because I know that we mentioned a lot about the women, but sometimes a lot of women are also under male structures, you know? And I'm wondering how, maybe in terms of creating a safer space in studios, or just how do you guys feel from y'all experiences? Can men become better allies?
I guess because at some point I just tried to like tune that out and just be like, yo, I'll just bring in more females in my group. When I'm in a room full of men, I think if I have the ability to bring someone in, it's gonna be a female. Like if I'm in a studio and there's like someone needs to shoot photos or something, I'm gonna call a female photographer, you know, or a female musician. In the men aspect of how they can help, I'm not sure anymore. I just don't want to like kind of lean that in towards that or blame them anymore, you know, because the topic is out there. They know that, you know, they know that women don't have enough opportunities. So I'm not going to keep blaming them, you know?
Yeah, in my case, like I feel like as an industry we could make like a little manual.
I was
We can
definitely
hand out.
gonna add to that. Throughout my years just being in the studio from when I first started, you could definitely see that thank God there's a lot more female creatives, but there's always room for more in all areas of the industry, especially in the creative aspect. I think we need more female producers. We definitely need more female engineers and artists, of course. But definitely, I think there's been a surplus within the last couple of years. But compared to the whole spectrum, yeah, we definitely need more women in the field. I agree with y'all.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think one thing I do want to clarify is that it's not so much about putting blame. I look at racism as a white issue. I think white people, right? White people should be putting in more in terms of fixing racism, right? It's hard for you to be in the other side of racism, experience it, go through the emotional labor of fixing it, and then also have to, like, you know, you're experiencing and also working to fix it when you're working under a systematic structure. When you think of music, there's a reason why a lot of women have never been in a certain space. It's a patriarchal space. So I look at it as, yes, we can have this conversation with women, but I also think that men should also take in that responsibility of also making sure that these studio spaces are safe for women,
100%.
that they feel safe, and that also that they're looking out for that. You know, for example, I know I have white friends and white colleagues who now are more aware of these conversations, and when they step into maybe an assignment where they know that culturally an African American or a Latino writer should be covering this, they're gonna create space for that, pass the mic, right? And I kind of want to see, I want to see this conversation more in production, because I think that that's such a big part of it too. So I kind of wanted to like plant those seeds and see where everyone's mind was at.
And part to add to that, it has to be a certain level of professionalism added more to the actual space, and respect, of course.
Y cuando viene a la situación, porque yo, o sea, yo soy padre de dos niñas, ¿no? Y he aprendido también que en el negocio me encanta que las cosas se están balanceando y que hay una situación de que tú puedes tener ahora una ingeniera, puedes tener una producer, pero también viene de la mujer en sí, la mujer latina especialmente es muy rica en todo y tienes que saber, o sea, el valor, no tener miedo, porque no puedes venir y decir, ¿me están escuchando? ¿Me escuchan?
Sí, sí, te escucho.
Ok, es de que la mujer también, especialmente en esto estamos hablando latina, tenga coraje y no tenga miedo de que, tú sabes, sometimes también hay que decir la verdad como son. ¿Sabes? Estamos en una sesión, puede llegar una persona y decir, oh, I do anything for my music. So ya tú estás poniendo una perspectiva allá afuera de que somebody can disrespect you. Understand what I'm saying? Y es muy importante para uno, para nuestras mujeres, para entender lo que ser profesional, tener respeto y tener al final del día no tener miedo a que, aunque es una industria liderada por hombres, at the end of the day we're in a different, tú sabes, in a different era y puede haber una CEO mujer, puede haber una presidente, puede haber una management que no tenga que, pero está en la actitud, en el respeto y también en el profesionalismo de entender que si hay hombres o mujeres, that's you 100%, and if you don't like it, next. Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm glad that we're having this conversation and that also that there's a lot of initiatives. Like, for example, that questionnaire was so important because just like highlighting that specific question, other people are now thinking about like, what is the woman's experience like in music? Why is there why is the percentage so low? And what, how is this so different from a male's experience, especially when you have to maybe think about how to plan your life, planning to have kids, or that pause that Jenny mentioned as well. Before I move on to the next question, is there anything anyone would like to add to the point, or we're all good? So good? So
Yep.
I'm wondering, and anyone can go first, I'm wondering where you feel music is headed. Like, what is the future of music looking like right now? I feel like so much has changed with streaming. The globalization of music has changed the industry bastante. We see how Latin music is being marketed now. We see that there's more collaborations, right? Back in the day, they would call it the Latin boom and crossover era, right? And I see that so many different type of tracks are coming out. I'm wondering where y'all heads are at in terms of how the future of music is going to look like.
I'll start off. I think right now it's in a dope creative space. It's very influential right now in the most part, where growing up, I felt like it was a division with certain genres. Even though the influences was very similar, now I feel like, especially in the Latin world, we don't know how much power we have from a consumer, from a creative standpoint, and also from an influential standpoint. And to see like the Latin trap, merengue, all this stuff just coming together, and production is just elevated to so many levels where sonically you hear so many different things in both genres, whether if it's American, whether if it's Cardi with a number one record and she's influencing merengue in her sounds, to where now Takesha and all of them are influencing the girls out here and how they rap. And I think that shit is so dope because we're reaching a level where I don't want to say it's getting even, but we're borrowing sauce, we're borrowing flavors from each other. And then in the production, I feel like the production world is actually forcing the artists to come work together. And I think before it used to be a certain level of playing field where they wouldn't cross that boundary and come over and get creative. And I think now between technology, of course, there's more people in the world, but technology and the actual music and our influence is actually making the world smaller, where I feel like the influences and sounds are coming together como un sancocho.
No me hable de eso, que tengo hambre.
Anyone else has any thoughts on this question?
Bueno, te cuento que yo creo que music es como dije antes, it's all about fusion. O sea, tú puedes hacer lo que quieras y estamos en una, y yo sé que everybody goes through the whole, después, pero yo creo que esta pandemia también nos hizo realize that, hey, you know what, like, haz lo que tú quieras. Do whatever you feel like is going to be good. Y como dijo él, o sea, tú a veces piensas que tu música quizás no va a cruzar fronteras y ganas el productor del año, ¿entiendes? At the end of the day, just go by your heart, go. Yo sé que es muy difícil, pero estar persiguiendo trends como que uno es tú sabes, hay personas que llegan al estudio y me dicen, yo quiero sonar con Prince Royce. And it's like, why? Understand what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like when Prince Royce was at the studio, he didn't want to sound like nobody.
Yep.
Entonces, understand what I'm saying? Like just, it's all about agarrar un poquito de cojones and go for what you really believe.
Yeah.
And I think music is going to talk for you. Understand what I'm saying? Pero yo creo que fusión, siempre ha habido fusión, pero fusión is the new era of music.
I feel like it's more prevalent now. There's definitely more opportunities and a lot more people are collaborating compared to before too.
¿Entiendes? Tener una música árabe con un dembow allá abajo. Understand what I'm saying? Works. Don't be scared. Entiendo, si estás en algo directo, pero que sea de raíz.
And to tag with what you're saying, right? That's the part that I love with the new producers and the new creatives. Y'all don't have any rules. There's no rules, and I feel like y'all work based off feeling, and I think that's dope. As a creative, I get inspired by that. I mean, me encanta eso when I hear all different types of fusions together, and I think the energy and the youth that people are bringing into the culture, they don't care what's going on. They just want to make hot shit, and they don't care where it's coming from as long as it sounds and it feels good. I think that's the space that we're at creatively.
Because of the music, you got Europeos y Asiáticos right now talking in Spanish or trying to. And that's super dope. You understand what I'm saying? Like they want to say caliente, they want to say my butt, whatever it is. It's like, hey, you know, we appreciate that, and vendrán otras cosas, vendrá en Bollywood, vendrán otros sonidos, pero at the end of the day estamos en nuestro momento, and I think that tenemos la responsabilidad para que esa pasión latina to spread all over the planet. So seguir trabajando.
Yeah. Jenny, what are your thoughts on the future of music so far, especially coming from such a hip hop space? I'm wondering what your thoughts are.
I feel like the future is independent artists. They're the ones who handle their own budgets. There's people who are willing to donate or money for them to continue with their music. If they need funding for a tour, they don't need, they can go on tour. If they have a pretty big enough fan base, they don't have to play a tour where it's like 1,000 heads anymore. It could be 200 or 300, and they can have sold out shows, So working with independent artists, they have like a consistency of dropping music every month or every week. So there's always something new with them. And like Buda said, there's no limit to their creative space. So I feel great working with them because they're always coming in with something new, whether they do work on an indie project, where they work on a hip hop project, there's always something new they want to create in their music. So I feel like independent artists, a lot of these labels want to give them distribution deals, and it's not for like years, a contract of years. It's just probably 1 year of a distribution deal, and they give them a budget, and with that budget they'll use it for videos or recording studio time, whatever they can do with their budget. The independent artist learns how to become a business person. So I feel like in the future we're going to see more of that, and then these big record labels are going to kind of want to be part of that. That's where I see it going.
I love that you mentioned that, Jenny. Thank you for your input, because I've definitely taken note of like just the rise of independent artists and how beautiful it is to see artists advocate for themselves even more.
Yeah.
We see these independent artists become independent individuals in navigating this space and learning the business, which is so important, you know, and it feels so cool to see artists own their craft,
Their
own,
craft, their masters. Yeah.
and also say, listen, like, I got this. I don't need the backing of a big label.
Yeah. They create their own LLCs and their own teams at this at that point.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. I really did. Ella, what are your thoughts on the future of music coming from your space? How do you feel?
Well, I definitely agree with Jenny. She took my thoughts this time. I think independent artists is the future, and I don't know. I'm more towards activism, and I feel like if you want to see change in the music industry, you have to be that change. And change to start with. You don't have to be like a famous writer, to make a proposal. If you want to see things happening in the music industry, I feel like, in coming back to the subject of women, like, we can do better, but there must be a willing to sacrifice time and take time and to see the things that are affecting us. And I feel like, I hope the future of the music industry also is female. That's my.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I loved everyone's input. Before we wrap up, I wanted to ask a business question, because we spoke about culture, we spoke about influences, pero I want that any young producer that is watching can come off or can walk away with gems that can lead them to a better decision, or just decision making in something that has to do with the business. So I'm wondering whether it's split sheets, whether it's professionalism, anything that you wish you may wanted something that you wanted. Let me take that back. Something that could have helped you, a term of knowledge, anything that you wish you would have known when you were younger in the industry that you know now. Is there any type of advice that you can give that can help a young producer navigating this space? I'll start with you, Buda, since you're right there.
I just say for my young creatives out there, the same hunger and drive that you aspire to have to be acknowledged in this industry, have that same drive to learn the business. Also have that same drive to learn the history and understand that Latinos been a part of this culture since day one, from the linoleum to the DJ to MCing to actually management to starting record labels. I could go on to Fania All Stars, all types of labels. 2, hip hop is nothing new under the sun. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We actually are inspired by everything under the sun. So from Latin America to African culture, it's all a melting pot. But if you can't educate yourself on how everything started, educate how much hard work, blood, sweat, and tears our people put into this culture, and understand the power of the consumer and how much of the population we make up, you understand what I'm saying? And how much influence we have from globally, and understanding that, and then understanding branding, understanding production, sound, sonics. But the business aspect, we always say for last, because we all want to be famous and look cool. Please take business very serious. If you can't educate yourself, get books on the music business. Study your elder artists who came up in the 70s and 60s and understand the mistakes that they made. And then look at some of our successful examples that we have now and how they learn from other people's mistakes. And I think you'll be good. And don't put a limit on your creativity. That's it. I hope I answered, if I said anything right.
Thank you. Thank you for your advice. Jenny, what are your thoughts?
I just feel like, as an engineer or producer, I feel like it's important to build your own platform. Sometimes you don't put all your eggs in one basket, like how they say. I've had a couple situations where I work with producers and they promise this, they promise that, and like it all falls out at some point. So you got to make sure that you got to build your own platform. So, you know, for me, for my example, it's I build my own platform where I can provide a service to people, whether it's mixing or engineering. But then again, I also end up working with either record labels or I engineer for other producers. If something else, if one of those things falls out, I know that in my case, I can still do my own thing. So I had to learn that throughout my whole career. And now people come to me by word of mouth, you know, relationships. People know me by MixedbyJNY, you know. So I think it's just building your own platform, your own image, and showcasing your art out there in the world, whether it's on Instagram or you build your own playlist on Spotify of all the work you've done. But you just also have to have that professional image out there of yourself.
Love that. Thank you so much, Jenny. Love that feedback. Napoles, how do you feel about maybe from your experience, any type of advice that you can give?
I mean, ya ellos lo han dicho todo. Yo creo que just protect your art, understand? Protege tu arte. Eso no quiere decir que andes en la calle con un ego cabrón, pero protect what you really believe. Y yo creo que de la misma manera como es Buda y Jenny, tienes que saber educarte, ser agradecido. Eso te mantiene las puertas abiertas. And be grateful. You know what I mean? Understand that this is a business. Siempre trata de create a team as well. Son muchas cosas, pero si yo hubiese tenido un Nápoles cuando pequeño, yo te puedo decir que es estudiar todo lo que puedas hacer también, ¿entiendes? Es un negocio, es una carrera y es tu vida, es una pasión. So, you know what I mean? Todo tu enfoque debería estar en tu música, especialmente cuando estás pensando, so, and if you like something, you know, grab it, but create your own situation, your own lane. Sea un poco atrevido, ¿no? You know what I mean? I used to remember MySpace, and I used to be the guy sending messages to Pitbull and hola people, tú no me conoces, pero yo hago esto, te puedo mandar una pista, understand what I'm saying? And sin miedo. Y eso me abrió muchas puertas, ¿entiendes? So at the end of the day, todo lo que han dicho los muchachos fue atreverte también a hacer cosas por tu música, ser agradecido con la gente que te abre las puertas, and try to be original.
Most
I
important.
love that. Thank you for that. A lot of great points. I hope y'all taking notes. Ella, what are your thoughts? I think you're muted.
Okay, I was taking notes of what I wanted to say. This is such a beautiful question. The first one is have mentors. I see a lot of young kids playing with them and making their own crews, but they forgot about having mentors. Have mentors. Just because you don't see an old producer creating content every single day doesn't mean you don't have anything to learn from them. They still producing great names. They don't post about it. Just go and find them. Have mentors. The second one is have fun. Have fun because, you know, right nowadays with the social media, everybody has so much pressure of I have to post today, I have to do this, I have to be this certain person. Have fun. Have fun. The third one is don't fall for the pressure of time. We are so scared of getting old. And we feel like if we're getting old, we're not going to be relevant because there's a 16-year-old boy who's making these crazy beats. There's always going to be a younger cat who's going to be doing better things or have this, but don't fall for that because that's a lie. That's the devil's lies. You know, I can have examples of great artists like Joni Mitchell, Ella Fitzgerald. They all, when they were getting older, their art was just getting better. So don't fall for that lie. The third one, this is the fourth one. Dreams can change with time. Don't be afraid if the initial vision that you have it's changing. Don't freak out. Whatever if you had a vision, if you have a talent, if you have a mission in life, if it's, if you imagine being famous and having expensive cars and you're living in a basement in the Bronx, don't be afraid. That's not the end of the, dreams can change, but whatever you are called to be, you're gonna be, is gonna be perfect. And the last one, be diverse. We're coming into a world who it's lacking of people who is open, be diverse, respect LGBT community, respect women, be open regardless of your religion, your beliefs, be diverse and create a space for people to shine. That's what we do, producers. We're always behind creating spaces for people. So be diverse.
That was amazing.
I love that. Oh my God. I loved all this feedback. I know that everyone watching is going to be very pleased. I want to personally thank you all for having this conversation with us, for telling us about your experience navigating music. I think what was so dope about this panel was that everyone is coming from a different space and experience, and just like bicultural background too, which is really, really dope. And everyone has such an amazing trajectory so far, and I can't wait to continuously see everyone's growth. And again, thank you everyone for the contributions y'all have done to the culture and for pushing music to different levels. So muchísimas gracias.